Bienvenidos a todos hermanos y hermanas hispanohablantes. Donald Trump está enfrentando una rebelión inesperada dentro del Congreso después de que incluso congresistas republicanos comenzaran a destruir públicamente a sus altos mandos militares por retirar tropas de Europa del Este y debilitar la posición de Estados Unidos frente a Rusia. Pero lo que empezó a revelarse sobre Polonia, la OTAN y las decisiones tomadas dentro del Pentágono está generando demasiada preocupación. Incluso los republicanos están furiosos. Miembros republicanos del Congreso se están volviendo en contra de Donald Trump, de los altos mandos militares de Donald Trump y del Departamento de Defensa de Donald Trump en audiencias del Congreso transmitidas en vivo por televisión ante el mundo entero. Quiero mostrarles lo que sucedió en las audiencias más recientes del Congreso. Esto fue ante el Comité de Servicios Armados, donde miembros republicanos del Congreso se unieron a miembros demócratas sobre una base bastante bipartidista para denunciar el ataque del régimen de Donald Trump a nuestro ejército. Y estos miembros del Congreso no se contuvieron en sus preguntas a estos altos mandos militares, incluyendo al secretario del ejército Dan Driscoll, así como al nuevo jefe del Estado Mayor del Ejército que reemplazó al muy popular jefe del Estado Mayor del Ejército, Randy George, quien fue apartado y despedido por Pete Hegseth, que por si no saben quién es, Pete Hegseth es el secretario de Defensa de Estados Unidos. Así que permítanme mostrarles lo que sucedió cuando el miembro republicano del Congreso, Don Bacon, estaba interrogando a Driscoll y a otros altos mandos militares allí, incluyendo al jefe de Estado Mayor del Ejército y a otros altos funcionarios del ejército estadounidense que estaban en esta audiencia sobre la decisión de Pete Hegseth y el Departamento de Defensa de retirar a unos 4.000 soldados que estaban siendo desplegados en Polonia, lo cual obviamente es crítico dado su proximidad a Ucrania y Rusia, y dado el hecho de que Polonia es un aliado modelo, y Donald Trump y Pete Hegseth están castigando a Polonia de la misma manera que castigaban a Alemania y atacaban a la OTAN. Observen el interrogatorio del miembro republicano del Congreso, Don Bacon, a estos altos mandos militares del régimen de Donald Trump. Miren, por favor.
For being here. I know this wasn't your decision. This was the Secretary of Defense's decision. But I got to tell you, it's reprehensible. It's an embarrassment to our country what we just did to Poland, in my view. So I know you said we had coordination with NATO or EUCOM. To answer it, the real question is why? Why have we pulled 2 armor brigades out of Eastern Europe?
Yeah, sure. I'm not on the policy side here.
But you are the Chief of Staff of the Army.
Sure.
There is no good explanation why we just removed 2 armored brigades from Eastern Europe. There's got to be some explanation.
Well, sure. I think as they reviewed the force structure, the conclusion was that we could reap back one of the brigades that are in the rotation. One brigade that's in the rotation pull that we send over to Europe. There's still another brigade there. There's still a division headquarters that's in rotation there. We still have 5th Corps that is over there as well.
But we pulled the brigade out of Romania. Now we're pulling the brigade out of Poland. Is there a plan to replace that brigade in Poland?
That you would have to ask the COCOM commander, sir, on how he's going to maneuver the forces that he has. We still have a force structure that is permanent force structure that's in Europe supporting our allies through both exercises and continual presence on the continent.
I know I may not represent 100% of people in this committee, but I think I represent the views of the vast majority. We disagree. Russia has invaded Ukraine. Have they given us any concessions to withdraw 2 armor brigades out of Europe as they're invading Ukraine? What concessions have they given us as we withdraw forces?
Sure, I can't answer that question.
Well, I know it's none. And this is why it's so foolish. We're sending a terrible message to Russia and to our allies. Here's another question. Do we know if Poland was notified by the secretary?
We don't know.
Well, I already know the answer because they called me yesterday. They did not know. They were blindsided. These are some of our best allies, and they had no idea. They still don't know what the plan is. They know, okay, the order was stopped. They don't know if this is just a suspension or permanent. We owe Poland, and our Baltic friends, who are very vulnerable from this decision, a better explanation here and a rational. We should be doing this before we actually make the decision. We should be coordinating with them. It's an embarrassment. I'm telling you, this is an embarrassment to our country, the way this is being handled. And I happen to know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask, did you said we coordinated with EUCOM? I can guarantee you they did not say this was low risk. Can you verify that? Because I happen to know they said it carries risk. So in other words, it was coordinated with EUCOM. But they did not say this is a low-risk decision. Am I right?
So that those discussions, that risk statement from the co-commander back into OSW, it's not part of what the Title 10, of the Army does.
I was just hoping as the Army chief, they would keep you better informed. But I happen to know this because I served in NATO. They did not say this is low risk. So in other words, the Secretary of Defense made this decision over some objections of the EUCOM commander. That's what I submit here. I just want to say this is a slap in the face to Poland. It's a slap in the face to our Baltic friends. I think it's a slap to the face in this committee because we've put floors and restrictions on the Pentagon and further reductions in Europe because of what they did with Romania. They told this committee, or the leadership of this committee, that we were not going to, there was no plans to remove this brigade from Romania. Then a week later, it was done. So then we responded in the NDAA to prevent this kind of behavior, and it's happened again. And I think this committee, under the chairman, the ranking member, we got to hold the secretary accountable for this decision. It's wrong. Okay, my second question, I know I'm the Baltic Security Chairman. Latvia and Estonia have HIMARS, but they just have the launchers. They don't have the warheads or the weapons. What is the plan to fill that?
A continuación les mostraré a otro miembro del Congreso, esta vez un miembro demócrata del Congreso. Las preguntas del miembro del Congreso, Courtney, a estos funcionarios. Miren, por favor.
Secretary Driscoll, on May 1st, 4,000 Army soldiers of the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team attended a color casing ceremony, a send-off ahead of deployment to Eastern Europe that the Army had announced last March. At the ceremony, Major General Tom Felty, who's the head of the 1st Cavalry Division, gave some very stirring remarks where he said, quote, "Make no mistake, our adversaries are paying attention. When an armored brigade combat team deploys forward, it sends a clear and unmistakable signal. The ABCT is the embodiment of American ground combat power." Given the fact that the administration just canceled this deployment a couple days ago, we had people actually already over there right now. I guess the question sort of begs itself, which is the opposite true? If our adversaries are paying attention, is the cancellation of a deployment of a brigade combat team sending, again, the opposite signal in terms of our commitment to our allies in Eastern Europe?
Sure. Thank you for the question. The COCOM commander, General Grinkovich, received the instructions on the force reduction. I've worked with him in close consultation of what that force unit would be. And it made the most sense for that brigade to not do its deployment in theater. We can continue to work closely with General Grinkovich and his team on ensuring that he has the right forces from us, the Title 10, headquarters here, that mans, trains, equips, and gets the units ready for their deployments. So we worked with him on what would be the unit that would not execute the mission.
Well, again, I think General Felty is right that our adversaries are paying attention, and that I appreciate the answer, but frankly, I don't think that really rises to the moment in terms of just, again, the situation that exists in Europe. And frankly, it's not just our adversaries that are paying attention; it's our allies. Poland, which is apparently where the deployment was at least going to begin and originate, is an ally that's spending 4.8% of GDP in terms of their defense budgets, and all the other Baltic countries are up in that range as well. And given the fact that the administration also canceled or is pulling back 5,000 troops out of Germany, I'm sorry, I just think this is a horrible message that, again, our adversaries and allies are paying attention to.
Ahora, en el próximo clip que voy a compartir con ustedes, quiero mostrarles que esto se hizo sobre una base bastante bipartidista en el Comité de Servicios Armados, porque las decisiones que están siendo tomadas por estos altos mandos militares, específicamente en el Departamento de Defensa y a nivel de la Oficina Oval, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, ese nivel, son muy peligrosos. Son tan perjudiciales para la OTAN, son tan perjudiciales para nuestros aliados, que incluso los republicanos están alzando la voz. Así que tienen, ya saben, al jefe de comité, el miembro del Congreso Rogers, tienen a este tipo Austin Scott, un miembro republicano del Congreso, un miembro republicano del Congreso de Georgia, y luego tienen al miembro demócrata de más alto rango, el miembro del Congreso Smith. Los tres están alineados aquí denunciando el régimen de Donald Trump, a los altos funcionarios militares del régimen de Donald Trump. Permítanme mostrarles lo que sucedió aquí. Miren el clip, por favor.
Was the 2nd Armored Brigade rotation to Poland canceled?
Just a couple days ago, Congressman.
Okay, a couple of days ago. And when were so who made the decision to halt that?
Sure. In consultation with the COCOM commander, he received the direction to do the reduction. We looked at what would be the best choice.
When did he receive that direction?
Sure, I'm not sure exactly the date that he received it. This was all, relatively recent, and we worked back and forth on what those recommendations would be, and the order came down that
Okay, let me-
brigade would be one of them.
I'm sorry, I'm short on time. You say recent. When you say recent, you mean 10 days or
Yeah, I
2
think
months?
it's probably been within the last 2 weeks. Yes, sir.
Okay, within the last 2 weeks, the decision was made. So this has been a long plan. My understanding is advanced elements were already overseas. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And equipment was in transit.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When were you informed of the decision, General?
Just a couple days ago, whenever,
Okay.
within that
That's-
2-week window, sir.
Okay.
Whenever we worked together with the COCOM commander,
Okay.
again,
It's-
Title 10.
I understand. And Secretary Driscoll, were you informed at the exact same? I assume you were informed at the same time.
Yes, Congressman.
Okay. Were you consulted about the decision prior to the decision being made, or was the decision made and you told this is the decision and we're going to stop this rotation?
Sure. I had consultations with General Grinkovich on different elements that are in Europe and what would be the most prudent one
Okay.
to stop.
Okay. And these conversations were all within the last 2 weeks.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. All right. I support NATO. I will say this. Obviously, there's a tremendous overlap between NATO and the European Union. I'm very frustrated with the European Union on a lot of trade-related issues, and I've told our NATO partners in my office very directly, you don't get to pretend you're our friends when you pass non-tariff trade barriers through the European Union that damage industry in the United States, like the timber industry with what they've done with the European Union deforestation regulation. So I understand it's tough to balance all of these things, but I want to get to, my primary concern, I'm not worried about the 5,000 troops coming out of Germany. They had been plussed up, they're being pulled back. But it seems to me that when there's been a long planned rotation, it's a 9-month rotation. How long have we been doing these rotations? They're done on an annual.
Yeah, we've been doing them for a couple of years now, sir, since the invasion. But we also continuously do planning on what the force elements will be utilized by the COCOM commanders based off the needs that they present.
But the advanced were already there. The equipment was already on the way before the decision to cancel was made, correct? All right. I want to read this is what the Pentagon said. The decision to withdraw troops follows a comprehensive, multi-layered process that incorporates perspectives from key leaders in U.S. military in Europe and across the chain of command, said Acting Pentagon Secretary Joel Valdez. This is not an unexpected last-minute decision. I don't see how that statement can be true.
Congressman, I would say outside of the broader specifics that General Laniv is talking about, we are constantly in contact with OSW and the combatant commanders. We're having planning, and this is not meant to hide the ball. This is to say this type of conversation is going on throughout the year, every single year, and the Army is always ready to move people and things based off combatant commander and Secretary of War's preferences. And so this is not that unusual.
Secretary, I respect you. These are major decisions that appear to many of the members of this committee to be last minute decisions.
Gentleman's time's expired, and the gentleman is correct. We have been very focused on this committee about force posture and UCOM in particular not being disturbed, particularly without what statute requires is consultation with us. And we didn't get that. So we don't know what's going on here, but I can just tell you, we're not happy with what's being talked about, particularly since there's been no statutory consultation with us. Ranking members recognize.
Emphasize that point, and I yielded my question time. But the one thing I really want, and we talked about this yesterday, General, why? Okay, I can't even get an answer to that question. All right, we had a brigade combat team ready to go to Poland, decided not to, and the only answer I've got is, well, that's what they told us to do. Okay, why? I mean, what is the strategy behind this? And it is a pretty dramatic decision to, at the last minute, pull a team that you're trying to send over there. If there's some strategy behind it, then you guys ought to know and you ought to be able to communicate.
Ahora, quiero compartir con ustedes también, tienen aquí al miembro demócrata del Congreso, Crow. Él estaba interrogando a Driscoll y este fue un momento muy importante también. Recordemos que el miembro del Congreso, Crow, de las Fuerzas Especiales, Ranger del Ejército, vio de cerca campañas de combate muy serias. Sabe mucho sobre el ejército, obviamente dadas sus posiciones en el pasado, dado que es un veterano, dado que sirvió en el ejército. Permítame mostrarles mientras que plantea lo que yo creo que es un problema muy crítico. El hecho de que el régimen de Donald Trump ha desmantelado a los equipos que se encargan de mitigar las bajas civiles en la guerra. Especialmente ahora que el régimen de Donald Trump se ha involucrado en todos estos crímenes de guerra. Permítame compartir con ustedes lo que sucedió. Miren, por favor.
Both combat veterans, both served honorably in the Army. And during the course of my 3 combat tours, I had the privilege of serving at the so-called tip of the spear, some of our most elite combat units, 82nd Airborne Division, 75th Ranger Regiment, served with the Joint Special Operations Command in Afghanistan. And I bristle at this notion coming from the Department of Defense, from Secretary Hegseth, that we somehow lack lethality. There's something wrong with our culture because the men and women who I served with were committed to the mission and fought very hard and were very lethal when it came for the time for that. But over the course of those tours, what became very obvious to me is that what we did lack was a full understanding about how to win the support of local populations, how to lay the groundwork for support for what we were trying to achieve. That we were very good with missions, very great with tactics and accomplishing every mission. But we ultimately lost the support of the people in Iraq and Afghanistan who we were there to serve and to help liberate. So I created a bipartisan law in 2023 to create a Civilian Protection Center of Excellence to assemble the best practices, to understand how we protect civilians. We make that a priority for our military. That CPCOE passed on a bipartisan basis years ago. It was nestled in the Army where it exists. I'm very concerned by a recent DoD IG report that says, quote, in February 2025, the acting Undersecretary of Defense and the Secretary of the Army each developed proposals for the SecDef to consider and approve options to eliminate or significantly reduce the CPCOE. How do you square that with law in the bipartisan intent of this committee, including many fellow combat veterans, that we make this a priority for our military?
Congressman, I just want to start off with the statement that, as somebody that also deployed to theater about the time you're talking about, civilian casualties, no one should wish for those, and they create all sorts of, beyond just the morality issues, they create all sorts of negative externalities for a mission that are just bad for the mission. And so we in the Department of War and the Army are perfectly aligned that we want to minimize those in every instance. Specifically what you're referencing, Congressman, as far as I recall, and I will follow up with your office if this is incorrect, Our intent was simply to move it from the Army to DOW. I don't think we had any intention to shrink it. There was an instance about a month and a half ago where I believe I spoke with your office where in doing some, the United States Army had never matched up its people and its jobs. And so we spent about 10 months going through an exercise to try to save the American taxpayer about $2 billion a year. And what we had found out in that process is we had never accurately coded the positions for the center so that when we went through that exercise, it looked as if we were getting rid of it. I believe after we spoke with your office, we immediately remedied it.
We need to follow up. I know our offices have been talking, but things are not squaring here, right? This DOD IG report is pretty clear. There are proposals to eliminate CPCOE, which is different from a coding shift or an accounting shift of personnel and resources, because the report went on and it said, it found that lost personnel and leadership at COE is hindering full DoD compliance with its civilian casualties and harm policy, a policy required by federal law. The Office of the Secretary of War and DOW components lack many of the personnel and tools designed to execute the statutory purpose. So something's not happening. It is not conducting its statutory role and mission. It's losing personnel. It's losing resources. It's being shifted around. This needs to be fixed because this is law. If you don't like the law, we can talk about that, what needs to be changed, but it has to be changed here. So long as it is law, it needs to be carried out.
Totally agree, Congressman. We'll follow up with your office. And just to speak on behalf of the Army, the intent is to follow all statutory intent and the laws. And so we'll make sure that we're in compliance.
Thank you, Secretary.
Ahora, tienen a Don Bacon, miembro republicano del Congreso, publicando lo siguiente. Solo quiero decir lo que el régimen de Donald Trump está haciendo. Esto es una bofetada en la cara para Polonia. Es una bofetada en la cara para los amigos bálticos. Es una bofetada en la cara para este comité. Y luego, en respuesta, el secretario de prensa republicano en el Departamento de Defensa, Sean Parnell, publicó: la decisión de retirar a las tropas sigue el proceso integral y de múltiples niveles que incorpora las perspectivas de líderes claves en el EUCOM, el Comando Europeo, y de toda la cadena de mando. Esta no fue una decisión inesperada de último minuto, y sería un informante falso, sería falso reportarlo como tal. La verdad es lo que dice el titular político. No tenía idea de lo que venía. Funcionarios del Pentágono atónitos por la decisión de Pete Hegseth sobre las tropas en Polonia. No estaba claro por qué el secretario de Defensa emitió la orden de no enviar tropas en una misión de rutina a un país, a lo cual el miembro republicano del Congreso, Don Bacon, escribe: estos son patrañas. Para empezar, Polonia no fue notificada. Altos líderes contactaron conmigo hace unos días diciendo que fueron tomados por sorpresa. Y me he enterado de que EUCOM no dijo que hubiera un riesgo mínimo al cancelar el despliegue. Este fue un curso de acontecimientos insensato y vergonzoso. Pero también fue un curso de acontecimientos del que debes de preguntarte a quién está beneficiando. Está beneficiando a Vladimir Putin, ¿verdad? Al crear esta situación en la que Polonia es ahora más vulnerable y se está enviando el mensaje de que Estados Unidos no va a apoyar a Polonia. De la misma manera que Estados Unidos no está apoyando a Ucrania. De la misma manera que Donald Trump está diciendo que podría retener las armas que deberían de ser enviadas a Taiwán, claramente después de reunirse con Xi Jinping en China. Mientras que Donald Trump hace todo eso, quiero decir, ven a los adversarios, ven a Rusia, ven a China, ven a Kim Jong-un y a Irán, ya saben, todos en ascenso. Está bastante claro lo que está pasando. Déjenme ustedes saber, por favor, lo que piensan al respecto, ya que como siempre les he dicho, para mí al menos, lo más importante siempre es su opinión al respecto. Voy a estar encantado de leerla dentro de los comentarios. Amigos, también recuerden que si les gusta el contenido de política estadounidense, les va a encantar suscribirse al canal, ya que subo videos como estos todos los días. Mi nombre es José Alvarado, soy economista y estoy comprometido a informarlos diariamente. Nos vemos en el siguiente video. Adiós.